So I've got this 1/4 by 3/4 inch spruce, and I just put a fulcrum here and a couple clamps, and just clamping these down to put a curve here. And I'm just going to try using steam and heat from an iron here to see if that'll make these things stick in position. I know that just clamping them in this position for a few hours actually bent them some. I clamped them and left them for a few hours, then unclamped them, and they were slightly bent, but not as much as I'd like. Hopefully this steam can make it more permanent, and this in particular make a bigger difference. Help more of a bend stay in place. When I unclamped them, they sprang back quite a bit. There was just a tiny little speck of bend. Hopefully this steam will help this greater bend stay in place. I have no idea if this will work. Alright, here's the curve. Let's unclamp it and see how much spring back there is. Some. But if it relieves the pressure during the glue up, just a little bit, that'll be great. That's good, actually. I like it. That's actually good. I think that'll help a lot to relieve just a little bit of the pressure, or actually maybe a lot of the pressure. It's only a little bit of a curve, but it might be enough to drastically reduce the pressure in the glue up. So that's pretty cool. So I think what I did is going to help a little bit, but I think the ideal way to do it would be to make some kind of a jig that's got more of a shape of the airfoil, similar to the jig that you used to build those ribs, all the main ribs, not the butt ribs, and be able to clamp this to that piece to get a better curve over a greater portion of this piece. So I think that's a good idea for any of you who might be building a plane. There's an idea for you. But I think this will help. This will relieve some of the pressure on this joint up here, having this little bit of curve right here. So I just wanted to give you a tip. I think this is probably about the smallest quantity of epoxy you can mix up with any kind of accuracy. I guess this is milliliters. So 10 milliliters of the resin, this stuff, and then a milliliter of the hardener. So it's 10-to-1 ratio, this particular is. So, you know, you've got this much of it, and I use just a popsicle stick to mix it up. And I think this is about the smallest batch you can mix with any kind of precision. And yet, every time you do anything with it, virtually every single time, 99.9% of the times, you have epoxy left over that you just throw away. So what I'm doing is just trying to use as much of it in a batch as I can. So I've got this is the first of the 4 aileron butt ribs, or the ribs that go on either side of the ailerons. And this is glued up and set. And what I had clamps all along this edge to hold it in place while the epoxy cured. Now that the clamps are off, I will glue on these gussets. One here, one here, one here, and one there. I was able to do these at the time. You know, but if that's all I did, I'd throw away 95% of the epoxy. So these are the butt ribs for the lower wing. I'm also going to epoxy on the nose rib and this vertical piece of spruce in front of the front spar opening. And I'll do that on both of those lower wing butt ribs. Additionally, so these uprights, these are the cutouts for the aileron butt ribs. I still have one left to glue these uprights on, this one here. So I'll glue those. That'll be the last thing that I do probably. And then I will take the nose rib and the cap strips that I've got glued up down there, and I'll epoxy one of those to this cutout. So I'll do a whole bunch of different things just to try to use up, to try to keep from wasting as much epoxy as possible. I'll still have to throw out some, but so some planning just can help avoid waste. You know, usually you do what you can do and chuck the rest, but in this case, a little planning will definitely help me do lots of little things, so I don't throw away most of the epoxy that I mix up. That's my tip. So I'm not gluing this up. This is just clamped in place so that I can trim this end. I glued this up, and I glued this up. If the camera will focus, anyway. But these were just sticking out several inches. Make sure before you mix up your epoxy that you've trimmed this so that it fits correctly. And these angles are important because there's a little angle, a funny angle here on the lower side of the rib. So clamp it in any place where you need to hold a specific angle, and then you can see this is the thing I want to fit well. There we go. So I cut it with a bandsaw close, and then made several trips to the oscillating belt sander to get it to be a nice fit. So just make sure you remember to do this before you start the glue up, or you'll be really annoyed. Just a little tip.